Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Bureau of Justice Assistance Tribal Civil and Criminal Legal Assistance Program FY 2021 Competitive Grant Announcement Webinar. I'm Nikki Campbell, and I'm the Executive Director of the National American Indian Court Judges Association. We are TA providers under the TICLA program, and I will be assisting and moderating this afternoon during the webinar. And so let's go ahead and begin. It is 1:30 and it looks like we have a good amount of attendees in the room. And again, welcome everyone. And if you've attended a NIJA webinar before, you know that we really love to hear from you guys and to see everybody participate, particularly in the chat box. So this afternoon, why don't you go ahead and you can see the chat function here in WebEx is going to be right off to hopefully your right-hand side. Why don't you just go ahead and say a quick hello, introduce yourself, introduce your tribe, or introduce your organization and your role with the organization. We'd love to see who's all here, and we'd all like to say hello to everyone. So again, I'm Nikki, and I am working remotely in the Denver area with my staff, who's also working remotely. Elton and Ansley are both introducing themselves in the chat right now. So if you have any questions or any issues along the way, why don't you go ahead and just place your questions or your issues right there in the chat, or reach out to Elton and Ansley, and we'll go ahead and make sure that you have some assistance. Throughout the presentation, we're going to go ahead and reserve a majority of our questions for breaks at the end of each section. So if you at any point during the presentation of any particular session, an area, have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat box, and Elton and Ansley will make sure to note that and pass that along to the presenters. And so that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce those two presenters, since we do have some limited time and a lot of really fantastic content that we want to present to you. So first of all, we have Narina Henry. She's a Senior Policy Advisor for Tribal Affairs for the Bureau of Justice Assistance, U.S. Department of Justice. And then we have Gisela Barnes, the State Policy Advisor for the Bureau of Justice Assistance at the U.S. Department of Justice. And so Gisela and Narina are going to be walking us through this entire process and talking a little bit about the TICLA program and what the TICLA program offers, not only for tribal communities, but also for just generally related to tribal policy development and what's happening nationwide. All right, and so here is our brief agenda. And so we're going to go through the TICLA program overview first, and then we're going to turn it over to Narina Henry with the application overview, and then turn it over to Gisela to talk a little bit more about the resources and Just Grants program. For those of you who are already grantees of federal programs, you're well aware that there have been some changes on the back end and with the feds. And fortunately, we have Gisela here who can talk a little bit about the Just Grants program and just generally about the process. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save the larger overview of the TICLA program and hand that off to Narina in a couple of slides. Because she's going to go over the entire application overview. But generally, the TICLA program is the Tribal Civil and Criminal Legal Assistance Program. And generally, the goals are to enhance the operation of tribal justice systems, and then, of course, to provide training and technical assistance to those tribal justice systems. And so, as Narina is going to talk about a little bit later, there are two particular category areas within the TICLA program. And we have Category 1, which is the Civil Legal Assistance Services, and then Category 2, which is the Criminal Legal Assistance Services. For the Civil Legal Assistance Services, we do have a primary award that has been given out to Montana Legal Services. And Montana Legal Services then is able to provide sub-awards to Indian Legal Services that provide services to many tribes across the country. For example, under the civil program, we do have Nevada Legal Services. They provide services related to tribal advocate training in all parts of the state. And then they've also worked on creating things like comprehensive self-help forms for family law cases, pro se cases. We do have Michigan Indian Legal Services, and several of their tribal courts have been assisting with the tribal healing to wellness courts, peacemaking, and diversion programs. And they also provide direct services, legal services to Native communities. Underneath the civil legal aid, we also have Idaho Legal Services, Colorado Legal Services, California Indian Legal Services, and Anishinaabe Legal Services, excuse me. And those are just a few examples of some tribal legal services that provide direct services to our tribal community members, not only for individuals, but they also have been providing it on a broader level. For example, California Indian Legal Services also provides training and technical assistance and legal advice on matters of jurisdiction, police communication system access, practices and procedures, and then current and relevant case law for tribes in California. Under the criminal programs, we have examples related to direct services and client representation. So Alaska Legal Services has been assisting with capacity building for tribal justice systems. They're currently listed under the criminal programs, even though there isn't the jurisdiction per se, but what they've been doing is advising tribal justice systems on due process compliance. They've been working on tribal court proceeding, assisting in developing tribal court policies and procedures, tribal court forms, and then they've also been working with tribal and state cross-jurisdictional cooperation. So that's kind of how they're falling into that criminal side. We do have Dakota Plains Legal Services, Idaho Legal Services, Nevada Legal Services, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, and Utah that also fall as sub-grantees under there. And all of those legal service providers are providing some sort of direct representation to clients or to tribes to help them build their capacity. And then the final category that is not up for solicitation this year is category 3, and that is the training and technical assistance portion of it and the support for the entire TCLA program. And right now there are 2 awards, APPA and NYJA. And NYJA is here to help. Number 1, we are assisting with justice capacity building, and number 2, we are also working with all of the tribal grantees and the NAILS grantees to develop resources to help not only those grantees, but hopefully tribal legal programs across the country and across Indian country. So we do provide overall training and technical assistance. As you can see there, a couple of the things that we currently have in development are our holistic defense curriculum development and pilot project. And so, you know, we could talk for days about that particular project, but it is more or less a wraparound service and development of collaborative legal approaches to help individuals and tribal communities and in addressing those collateral consequences that are a result from being justice system involved. So whether that's for the individual or the family, that is what that holistic defense project is addressing. And so we will have a pilot project, but then we're also in the works with some curriculum development and corresponding training related to that project. And then hopefully, you know, we have fingers crossed that this one's going to come out shortly, but we do have a tribal lead coming out shortly, and that is going to be a web-based training, and it is some interactive modules that can be self-paced by any of the individuals taking it. And so we've really designed this so that It's for anybody who is new to Indian country or practicing in Indian country or new to practicing in tribal courts. But it's covering a wide range of criminal advocacy topics, child welfare. We should have a few corresponding webinars and, of course, some complimentary podcasts as well. So please keep an eye out for those announcements, and we should have those released hopefully within the next couple quarters this year. And then lastly, APPA has a Tribal Law and Order Act implementation of Enhanced Sentencing Authority curriculum and development project. Narina can speak a little bit more to it, but we do know that they've been working on the in-person curriculum piece, and then there's also a web piece to this as well. And I will go ahead and defer to Narina to talk a little bit more about those pieces of TA.
Thank you, Nikki. This is a really exciting project. The implementation of the Enhanced Sentencing Authority authorized by the Tribal Law and Order Act. BJA provided resources to develop a curriculum for Indian tribes, and we have developed this collaborative approach to developing the curriculum, where we had gotten 3 different panels. One was a tribal government specific panel. The next one was the federal panel. And the third one was the tribal training and technical assistance panel. And one of the reasons why we brought all of these groups together is that each one of them had some working knowledge on implementation of this new authorization. And we wanted to capture all of that good information and put it toward this curriculum. We also worked in partnership with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They were part of the federal group, and the U.S. Attorney's offices and other federal agencies in order to help really develop and to share with us what they were hearing from tribes as well. And so we've developed a curriculum that has an instructor's guide, participant's guide, and I think it's 7 modules. And that's for the in-person training. And we have gone through to pilot the training and gotten comments. And we are now in the process of finalizing that curriculum, that in-person curriculum, and it's currently with BJA. That curriculum, once it's released, of course, it's in-person curriculum, and we are going to use that curriculum to do some online training, and we'll be providing that training publicly, and that will be self-paced as well. So we're real excited about this training work that we're doing, and we hope that in this early summer, information will be provided on our accomplishments and next steps. And in the future, we will provide guidance to tribes who are interested to access this training, resource. We will share more information with you about that. So, Nikki, back to you.
All right, thank you, Narina. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right, so with that was a very short section. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask related to the current training and technical assistance, the current training and development, access to any past trainings? If you have any questions, again, go ahead and put it right down here in the chat, and we'll go ahead and address those. If not, let's go ahead and move on to the other section of our agenda, which is the application overview.
Thank you, Nikki. This is Narina Henry again. Thank you so much. I wanted to take a moment just to introduce myself and let you all know that I am Navajo from the Navajo Reservation and from the Navajo tribe. My clan is Tawansh, Hawashlana Bashashin, Tatnazatni Dashache, Ashinhi Dashanella. I am of the Water Edge people, born for the many Hogans. My maternal grandfather's people are the Tangle people, and my paternal grandfather's people are the Salt people. And I serve as the Senior Policy Advisor here in the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and I also manage the Tribal Civil Criminal Legal Assistance Program. Sorry, I just had to do the introduction. Okay, important, the application deadline. I think you have seen in the application that there are two deadlines. The first is in grants.gov, and that deadline is April 7th, 2021. And the second is in Just Grant, and that is April 21st. These are important timelines that you want to keep in mind. Definitely register and get your information into grants.gov, and I recommend you do this ahead of time. The application submission for April 21st, I also recommend that you submit that early, because there will be a lot of other applicants submitting their applications, not only from the TICLA, for the TICLA program, but for other programs that BJA administers. Wanted to let you know that there is going to be a recording of the solicitation webinar, and it will be made available on the BJA website. I've posted there on the slide the URL address. If you go to the BJA website and type in the search box TICLA program, it'll take you right to the microsite that has all of this information and other information. So where do we find the TICLA solicitation? This is one slide I wanted to put in here because I often want to know, where can I find that solicitation? Well, I have provided that URL, and again, it is at the BJA website. And if you go to the funding opportunities for 2021, it will be posted right in that section. If you go to the BJA TICLA program site, you will be able to access the solicitation. So there's several different ways. Next, the program goal. Now, the goal of the TICLA program is to build and enhance capacity and improve the delivery of civil and criminal legal assistance, civil and criminal legal services to individuals and tribes, as well as to develop policies that improve access to tribal justice systems. Program objectives for Category 1, Civil Legal Assistance Services. The amount of quality of civil legal assistance services for tribal members pursuant to federal poverty guidelines, federally recognized Indian tribes, and tribal justice systems. It is also the amount of quality of other legal assistance services to support tribes, enhancing their capacity, operations, or legal structure. Category 2, criminal legal assistance services, is very similar. The amount and quality of criminal legal assistance services for tribal members pursuant to federal poverty guidelines, federally recognized Indian tribes, and tribal justice systems. The amount and quality of other legal assistance services to support tribes, enhancing their capacity, operations, or legal structure. Now, the eligibility is really important. I think you have seen on the application eligible applicants, and then there's this word that says other, and that really is the other eligible applicants. We're currently in a new system, which is the Just Grant, and for many of us this is new, including posting our applications and our solicitation products into Just Grants, and wanted to make sure that everyone knew what the eligibility is for the TICLA program. It is nonprofits having a 501c3 tax status with the Internal Revenue Service other than of higher education. I'm sorry, there's a little box that I cannot read. Sorry about that. The second one is other eligible applicants, and this is for categories 1 and 2. Is eligible applicants are nonprofit entities as defined by 26 USC section 501 501c3, including tribal nonprofits, tribal enterprises, and educational institutions, public, private, and tribal colleges and universities, which provide legal assistance services for Indian tribes, tribal justice systems, or members of Indian tribes pursuant to federal poverty guidelines. Now, the federal poverty guidelines are updated every year by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and I've provided a URL address. Now, here's the important point, is that the 501c3 tax status of a nonprofit is required per the authorization. A lot of requests come in to apply for this program, and I want to make sure that this is understood in terms of the eligibility. Now, the grant categories, this solicitation features two categories this year. One is Category 1, Civil Legal Assistance Services, and Category 2, Criminal Legal Assistance Services. Now, the allowable uses of funds for Category 1, Civil Legal Assistance Services, is one or more awards will be awarded, one or more awards with a grant maximum is $600,000, 24-month performance period. That is important when you are applying in your application. Now, the allowable use of funds for direct legal services. Award recipients are expected to provide a range of civil legal assistance services that may include guardian ad litem appointments, court-appointed special advocates, and development and enhancement of tribal court policies, procedures, and code. We also know that Indian tribes also ask for other things, more project-based activities. Grantees may partner with Indian tribes to provide legal or technical assistance, such as development of tribal law or intergovernmental agreements, or establishing a tribal civil legal assistance office. Now, for Category 2, Criminal Legal Assistance Services, again, one or more awards will be made with a grant maximum of $600,000 over a 24-month performance period. So the allowable uses for the resources or recipients are expected to provide a range of criminal defense counsel services that may include adult criminal actions, juvenile delinquency actions, guardian ad litem appointments arising out of criminal delinquency acts, or development and enhancement of tribal court policies and procedures and codes. We also know that a lot of tribes want other things and really falls into the project-based category, not category, but title. And grantees may partner with Indian tribes to provide legal or technical assistance, such as development of criminal codes or intergovernmental agreements, establishing a public defense office, or a law enforcement training. I wanted to put this slide in here because it's some specific information we have seen over the years with the TICLA program. You know, the core focus of this program is to provide direct legal services, and funding can also support other needs of eligible tribes. Providing conflict counsel for tribes exercising enhanced sentencing authority or special domestic violence criminal jurisdiction authorized through the Violence Against Women Act of 2013, and supporting veterans legal clinics for Native Americans. We have found that Indian Legal Services programs and some of our grantees in the past have provided these services, and they have been extraordinary. We've heard back from our grantees that these were just successful efforts. Now, the grant requirements, initially, annually, and final written summary of projects and deliverables. We want to know about the work you are doing, and we want to learn about what you've done, and also, where appropriate, share that information with people in different ways, through reports throughout our agency and the department, but also posting information on our website. We sometimes do deep dive stories and post it to the BJA website. So there are lots of things that we want to share. I think Nikki gave a really wonderful overview of the grantees and sub-grantees and some of their work. We have done a lot of like intergovernmental diversion programs in Alaska and California. We also see a lot of tribes setting up their own public defense office. We have had our grantees work with the tribes on setting up a healing to wellness court. There are just so many things that are incredible to hear about and see the work, and we'd also love to hear the impacts of what happens. So this is an avenue for grantees to really share their information with us. The grantees are also going to be required to, submit semi-annual progress reports. And this is another way where we find out, what is the need out there, for those grantees and sub-grantees submitting information. And for a few years there, we had a lot of sub-grantees and grantees asking for training on very specific topics. And we had shared the information with our TA provider and got some of the training sessions lined up. And I think that was a good response from our agency, but also putting funding aside for personnel to take advantage of the resources to train on other areas. Oh my, I have the delivery truck outside. I apologize for the music. And the third section is the quarterly financial reports. And those are grantees that will submit those reports. Now, the grantee requirements describe the communication and coordination plan to inform individuals, tribal communities, and tribal government of available resources. And then within that plan, describe the strategy to obtain signed tribal agreements. These can be letter of agreements, memorandum of agreement, memorandum of understanding that the applicant has the requisite authorization from the tribes to implement the proposed projects on tribal lands, and describe how the agreement will be collected and managed for audited purposes and BJA grant management activity. The communication and coordination plan is very important in this work. Nonprofits are not part of the tribal government, and when the tribal nonprofit is working and providing resources, I think it's just good, decent activity to go and coordinate and communicate with people in the tribal government to let them know what kind of resources you have and expertise. I think those are all important. And I highly recommend that people take this up and really develop that plan, because it could really be a huge bridge, not only in the work that you're doing, but in other ways you can see a definite impact in other areas. We have seen that with the Anishinaabe Indian Legal Services and some of the joint jurisdictional courts and joint jurisdictional diversion programs that we have seen. They did a lot of coordination, a lot of communication through their activities. So we have examples of places that you can visit with or talk with over the phone about those applicants and their work. So the signed tribal agreements, many nonprofits who work in Indian country, I think, are well aware of engaging tribal court, the chief judge, or a tribal leader in a smaller tribal court setting about the resources they have, and enter into consultation and really agree to develop a plan and, shake hands, but also sign an agreement of some sort. And I think that is incredible effort between the two entities. And for the work that we're doing here, certainly are requesting the tribes, the grantees move forward to enter into some type of agreement with the tribe. A lot of the grantees in the past translated that word as going to tribal council. And I do understand that some tribal councils meet once a year, twice a year, or 3 times a year. There is someone in the tribe that is running the president's office or tribal council. And I think what you will have to do is really take a look at tribal laws. My recommendation is talk with the chief judge and seek guidance from the chief judge on getting the agreement signed. And I think in that way, it will be very helpful. It will be helpful for us. The agreements will be housed with the grantee, and we, BJA, may request a copy of the agreement for our grant management purposes. So just wanted to let you know this is an important requirement. If you have any questions on this, I can certainly answer any questions that you have. But going on to the next slide is the next grantee requirement, and that's the advisory committee. You know, it regularly convenes tribal leadership, legal services, organizations, legal aid, public defenders with the goal of fostering collaboration, cooperation, program success while minimizing duplication of effort. The advisory committee is, I think, a wonderful tool in the work that we do at BJA. In the TICLA program, it can serve as a committee to review deliverables. It can also be a group that conducts the peer review on publications or training that a grantee is developing. So be creative in the way you use your advisory committee, get them involved, let them know what you're doing, and I think it will just lend a whole lot more support to the work that you're doing. Okay, the subcommittee recommendation, sub-grantees. TICLA has had a lot of sub-grantees since its life, over its life, it has a lot of sub-grantees. And if sub-grantees are a part of your award, BJ recommends the development individual implementation plan to guide and track the site's progress on its projects, objectives, preparation for future data calls, and success stories. And the purpose of this report is to share findings, lessons learned with BJA and TA providers to assist with program improvements and to identify other TA training and technical assistance needs. This is one thing I really enjoy, is listening and reading the stories from the sub-grantees. It is a lot of just incredible information, and I do share with my colleagues on the tribal team in BJA. I do share with my supervisor and other people who will listen, and I talk often about the success of our grantees. And it's incredible work that these grantees are doing. And so, again, I recommend the sub-grantees use this as a megaphone to talk about their work. And they should be very proud of the work that they're doing, because it's incredible when you start reading these stories. And what we hope to do as BJA in the future is post deep dive stories of some of the sub-grantees and past grantees on the BJA website so that other people can learn about them. So the basic minimum requirements. This is a strange term. When I first came to BJA, I was just like, what is that? Well, it's that wonderful, space where you get to take a look at all of these applications that come in and identify which ones meet the basic minimum requirements that you're requesting in an application, and those that do move forward to peer review. So what are those for this TICLA solicitation? Proposal abstract, proposal narrative, the budget detail worksheet, the budget narrative. The fourth one is, again, very important, the Internal Revenue Service Determination Letter recognizing the 501c3 tax status. There's just a reminder here that the project timeline, do not forget to include your project timeline in your application. Here's the important note. Applications that do not contain all elements designated by DJA as critical to the solicitation will not be submitted to peer review. I want to bring to your attention that great big large square there. It's important. Now the proposal abstract, and this is a 400-word paragraph or paragraphs. And what we hope to do is have the applicants include information that has the title of the overall project. The tribal legal service activity name. I gave you an example there. The primary services, activities, products, deliverables. You know, what do you propose will be the deliverables? The amount of funding requested. Again, be aware, we do have a ceiling for the funding. Service area, the number of tribes in the service area and the number of tribes that will receive services. This is very important. Questions do come forward about how were the tribes picked to receive the services. And these questions not only come from internally within DJA, but also from different organizations. People just want to know. The next thing is the target population proposed to receive services. Maybe a little bit redundant there, but I think once you start developing that information, it'll help in specifying more the target population. The next one is current capacity and increased capacity if funded. And data collection mechanisms. A lot of information, so 400 words is the limit. Okay, the proposal narrative. Now this is really where you get to shine and really tell your story and connect your proposal with just your design. So I want to make sure that you understand the following instructions. And I cannot emphasize this more. Please double space your program narrative, standard 12-point font, Times New Roman font, 1-inch margins, and it should not exceed 15 pages. It should not exceed 15 pages. Helpful hint, a table can be single space and can be put in an attachment. It is not a required component of the program narrative. I know that when I write, I get so excited. I put all of this information in there, and you know, I like charts and everything, and I put them in there too. And I go back and I do my editing. And you know, 5 times, maybe 6 times to finally get that, you know, 2 or 3 page document that I'm looking for, because I just want to share all this information. But when I start to focus, I really start taking a look at what is required and generally go back to the requirements. So outlined here for you, it's also in the application. So the sections, proposal narrative. This is very important to keep in mind. You might even want to make a copy of this particular slide, post it up next to your desk when you're working. So the description of the issue, about 20%. Project design and implementation, 30%. Capabilities and competencies, 30%. Plan for collecting data required for the solicitation's performance, 10%. Budget, 10%. And that's both for category 1 and 2. Now the budget and the budget narrative. The budget narrative should relate directly to the project design. Again, I say this. The budget narrative should relate directly to the project design. Cannot emphasize that more. Here's why. There should be no expenses in the budget that are not referenced in the program narrative. For example, do not ask for a laptop when not mentioned in the program narrative. Personnel costs should relate to the key personnel for the project. Subrecipients should be categorized as either subawards or procurement contracts and also be clearly stated in the project program narrative. Please refer to OJP guidance on this topic. URL is provided there. Now, the budget should include adequate funding to fully implement the project, but not more than the amount listed in the solicitation as the available funding amount. The budget narrative should leave no questions for a reviewer about the purpose of the requested funds. I think that's an important statement. If any of you have served as a peer reviewer, sometimes you get these wonderful applications that hit all of the points and there's no guessing. And then you have this wonderful proposal, but there are some couple of things missing, and the peer reviewers really are talking about it and trying to figure out, what it is. And I've been in that situation before as a peer reviewer, and highly recommend that you go through and try to make sure that you are very clear and you leave no questions for a reviewer about the purpose of your requested funds. And the last one is the total federal request entered into the standard form 424 should match the total federal request in the application budget for the entire project period. It's a whole lot. So more itemized budget for each year of the grant. For TICWA program, there is no match required. Applicants should budget up to 3 team members to attend up to 2 conferences or training sessions per year to support ongoing capacity and success in implementation. Now, if an applicant has 5 or more sub-grantees, it is encouraged to set aside training funds for staff to attend local, national training activities. And I know in this COVID era, we certainly are doing a lot more online training sessions. And I know in those rural, remote, and rural communities, a lot of people want that online training session. So certainly we leave it to the applicant to include the training activities there. Prior approval, planning, and reporting of conference, meeting, training costs is required. Okay, the Irs Determination Letter. We want a copy. We want a copy of that Irs Determination Letter recognizing the applicant's 501c3 tax-exempt status. Please include it in your application package. This letter determines the eligibility and further review of your application package. Can't put it any more simple. Okay, the timeline and project plan. We in BJA love this project plan, project timeline. It helps us in working with you as grantees. The timeline outlines the goals and objectives. It summarizes major tasks and activities, deliverables, the expected date of completion, and who's responsible for each activity. Indicate number of program participants to be served quarterly. Include solicitation requirements and expectations. I think that's also a very good thing to keep in mind. What I recommend you do for the last one is take the solicitation in a PDF format and go up to your Find search box and type in there requirements, and you will find all of those areas and sections for requirements and write them down. Your next search, expectations, and find out what those expectations are. They will really help you to write your program narrative, but it also will help in the timeline that you develop. So the additional attachments. Do not forget the additional attachments. And here's a tip. Make sure you triple check your checklist and make sure you have everything. This is incredibly important. Make sure that your project timeline is included, letters of support, memorandums of understanding, position descriptions, resumes of key personnel, a request for justification of employee compensation waiver if applicable, information to complete the application in grants.gov, standard application information for the standard form 424 information form for grants.gov. Now, tribal agreements or resolutions. We covered a little bit of this, but I wanted to just emphasize that nonprofits will be required to provide communication and coordination plan. And within that plan, the grantees will be required to engage with tribal leadership, tribal judicial leadership, to implement the projects on tribal lands. Again, memorialize your agreement. We are going to try something different this time with the tribal agreements or tribal resolutions. Before we had, BJA had requested that the applicant send us in those draft agreements or resolutions, and we kept it on file. What we are going to do this time around is really put that responsibility on the applicants to not only reach out and engage tribal leadership and get your signed agreements, but also keep that on file for audit purposes and to address any issues that surface between the tribe and nonprofit. And be aware, BJA may request copies of the MOAs, MOUs, tribal resolutions, agreements for grant management purposes. That's the different part of the tribal agreement and tribal resolutions. Other required documents. There's the Financial Management and System of Internal Controls questionnaire, applicant disclosure and justification, DOJ high-risk status, disclosure of lobbying activities, applicant disclosure of duplication and cost items, DOJ certified standard assurance, DOJ certifications regarding lobbying disbarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters, and drug-free workplace requirements. Applicant disclosure of pending applications, applicant disclosure and justification, DOJ high-risk grantees if applicable, and research and evaluation, independence and integrity. So some of the common mistakes that we see with applications: it does not respond to all of the requested information. Fail to submit all required documents, the abstract, narrative, budget, the Irs Determination Letter. Fail to draw a connection between the statement of the problem and the program design. It does not provide the requested information in relevant sections where peer reviewers could easily locate it. Inconsistencies identified within proposal, different writers by sections, did not provide specific measurable targets for performance measures. Some tips for you all. Check all of the resources linked in the RFP. Use scoring criteria as a general guide for how many pages to devote to each section. Don't wait until the deadline to apply. Go back and review the budget after completing the narrative. Focus on attachments, project timeline. We also call it time and task plan. And I cannot emphasize this last one enough. PDF everything. PDF everything. It just is smart. If unsuccessful in your effort, always ask the agency to provide comments. Comments are incredibly useful because these peer reviewers are very honest and they provide you comments and recommendations. I know when I served as peer review, I gave very large amount of information, and I hope that helped the applicant. The other point is keep prior proposals and comments, and keep in mind that they also have different review panel reviewers each time. So that is important. Ask the agency what other services can be provided, such as training and technical assistance, capacity building, scholarships for conferences and trainings. BJA offers these wonderful educational training sessions, online training sessions, that share with you kind of what's coming down the pipeline in terms of funding opportunities. It talks about helping to gather your data, helping to pull together an application. And all of these educational webinar sessions can be found on the BJA website. Look for the funding opportunities and current funding opportunities when you go into the BJA website, and it'll take you to a list of webinar sessions that are currently planned and those which have already been held. And you want to go into the past webinar sessions. And in there, you will see them lined up by dates, and you will start to see some of those webinar sessions that are like, hey, this will help me, and dive right into it. They are very helpful. Ask agency for copies of successful applications. And please do not be shy about this. There are some wonderful successful applications that we have. And we do talk with the grantee, and they have provided their approval to share these successful applications. So don't be afraid. The other thing, serve as peer reviewer. Go in and learn as much as you can about peer review, so that you get an idea of how these peer review sessions operate, and really can walk away with that perspective when you start to develop your program narrative. I think that's just incredibly important. When I first came to BJA, I think the Office of Justice Programs, I volunteered to read applications and read for the Office on Violence Against Women when their office used to be in the Office of Justice Programs, and worked very closely with that office, especially on its tribal activities. And I learned a lot about OVW and the tribal government programs they have. So definitely, I encourage you all to serve as peer reviewers. And if you need some information about how to do that, I did not include it in this PowerPoint presentation, but I currently have the information and can send that to you. Okay, we are at the question and answer session. Nikki?
All right, Narina, I do have one question that came through the chat, and someone had stated that I just want to clarify for eligibility that it has to be a 501c3 separate from the tribe. Not only the tribe itself, correct? And this individual wants to know the rationale for 501c3 requirement for eligibility versus the tribe.
The 501c3 is stated specifically in the authorization. We've had many tribes come in and share with us that they are nonprofit, and we understand that. However, when we looked at the authorization, it clearly reads nonprofit with a 501c3 status. Does that help you?
Thank you, Narina. Another question that came in is, where would we ask for past successful applications?
That is a wonderful question. What we can do is we can take your name and your contact information, and both Gisela and myself can talk among ourselves and identify which ones to send you.
All right, fantastic. And Narina, we will have your contact information listed at one point during this, correct?
You know, I think I will put it in the chat box.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic. And then we do have one last question here. It says if there, it asks, well, actually now I have two. It has a couple questions. So if there is there a limited submission requirement? So does that mean they can submit for both category 1 and category 2? Or does it have to be one or the other?
No, you can submit to both. You can submit to both. You can submit to both. You can submit an application to both category 1 and category 2, but they're two separate applications.
Yeah, understood. So yes, you can apply to both categories, category 1 and category 2, and there is not a limited submission requirement here. And then, sorry, Narina, the last thing I had was actually a comment about somebody who was interested in applying. And, you know, for all of you who are on the chat, NYJA does have some general webinar sessions related to not only TECLA, but we also have our resident grants person in-house as well, Elton Naswood. So, you know, of course, we would love to assist in any way possible. Feel free to reach out to any of the NYJA staff here, either on the webinar, or you could also email us as well. Narina, that's all the questions that we have for, oh, we do have one that just came in. Two, actually. If the final budget is less than the SF424 submitted in grants.gov, will this cause a submission issue?
No, not. No, it will not. What it will do is we will ask you to correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Basic minimum requirements are what you get. The basic minimum requirements is the threshold that you have for your application to be reviewed. And once it's reviewed, more than likely a peer reviewer will catch that, or Gisela, when she looks at the budget information and other things, Gisela may also catch it, and that will be one request that an applicant will be asked to address.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Narina. Gisela, did you have anything to add to that particular question?
For that particular question, it has to get through peer review to even get to my end to catch it. If it does make it through peer review and it is sent to me to be processed, I will reach out to the grantee and ask them to make the proper corrections on the budget. The 424 has to match the budget that's submitted.
Great, thank you, Gisela. And then the last question that just came in, Narina, was they are wondering if there's a limit on the number of awards, and also what is the total of all awards?
A limit on the awards. We currently have a maximum of $600,000 that an applicant can apply for. In the past, we've had applicants come in for like $57,000. Another applicant who came in for like $110,000. And these are, nonprofits out there, very specific project that they wanted to move forward with and found this resource. And so you have some of those smaller nonprofits who are working on a smaller project. And I hope that helps you. And then we have other grantees who request up to the maximum, $600,000.
All right, thank you, Narina. Those are all the questions we have for this particular section, so I think we can move on.
Okay, great. Nikki?
All right, now moving on, we're going on to section 3, which is just grants. And I believe we are going to have Gisela present on this particular section. So go ahead and take it away, Gisela.
Hi, my name is Gisela Barnes, and I'm a state policy advisor with DJA. I currently handle 7 different programs, and TICLA being one of the 7 programs. I also manage the state of Idaho, South Dakota, and the territory of American Samoa. So getting to Just Grants. Just Grants is a system that we just implemented in October the 15th of 2020. This system is offering a streamlined end-to-end process to enable the grantees and applicants to move seamlessly, quote unquote, through the full grant management lifecycle. And the reason I said quote unquote is because by Just Grants being new, we have discovered several hiccups. But if it ever comes a time where you're having a problem submitting your application, please contact Just Grants or contact Narina, and we will have that information on a couple of slides down. This gives the grantee and the award recipients new ways to manage their own entity information and that of the users of the system. And what we mean by your own entity information is your entity administrator will be the individual that will go into Just Grants and set up the authorized authority person. And your authorized representative is usually the president or of the organization, the president or chairperson of a tribe, depending on your structure. So it's usually the highest ranking person within your organization, your city, or your tribe. Also, the entity administrator will set up the person that's going to be your program manager, and that's the person that's going to actually manage the grant. And thirdly, your entity administrator will set up your financial representative. We've discovered in Just Grants that the financial representative is not always, can you go back 1 second, Nikki? The financial representative is not always the true financial person. We request that you put in your actual financial individual that works in your accounting office. We're finding there's a lot of issues with the financial status reports that's being reported. The proper information is not being reported. So if you could just keep in mind if you are awarded one of our awards, that your authorized representative, your point of contact, and your financial representative need to be the individuals that's going to actually fit those roles. Okay, next slide. Okay, for your application submission, please identify the forms needed to submit the application. Norina went through a lot of this earlier in the presentation. Complete the web-based budget form. We do have a budget worksheet that is provided in order for you to submit your budget, and it will ensure that you submit your budget and the item in your budget is submitted in the proper category. Complete the application, include a certified all information, and then hit the submit button for your application. Okay, the Just Grant support. They have tutorials where you can sign up for new training alerts. They have tutorials that's been pre-recorded that will assist you with the process of applying for BJA and OJP grants. You can learn more about the Just Grants management and financial systems. We do have the Just Grants website that's listed below. You could go on this website. It will be able to be the tutorials that will assist you. If you have any questions, you can contact the Just Grants help desk also. Next slide. And for all technical support or any questions, any issues with submitting your applications, listed here is your Just Grants email address, and also at 833, not at 800, but the 833 number, which is still toll free. And we have the office hours listed on this slide. So if you have any questions, submit your application through Just Grants, just contact the help desk. And that's it for this session. So I see that someone did put the web link in the chat. So are there any questions?
Yeah, and again, if you have any questions right now related to Just Grants or submitting your grant, feel free to put them in the chat. If you are a current grantee, you know that Just Grants is fairly new, so we all have, a plethora of questions, especially as we're moving through it. And so, those training links that were, the training link that was posted earlier, that's going to have a lot of resources there as well. We do have, oh no, that's Elton. So that being said, Gisela, let's go ahead and move on to the resources page, because we don't really have a whole bunch of questions coming in right now. But like we said, if you have any questions related to the previous section, please feel free to place them in the chat box. At the end of this, we'll also make sure that you have Norina and Gisela's contact information and those additional links related to Just Grants and training on this as well. So here we are. We do have some additional resources. And so these are just links right now, but we'll go ahead and make sure that in any follow-up emails that we'll go ahead and make sure that we have the entire URL here. But we do have the BJA TICLA program website. And on that particular website, you're going to be able to find things like the program overview, the categories. Norina had mentioned the authorizing legislation. So there's going to be all of those resources there. You're also going to be able to see past grantees and some promising practices, and also some resources that have been developed under the TICLA program there. There is the link to the FY 2021 TICLA solicitation. And if anybody has that particular link out of the hosts, could you please go ahead and just paste that right here in the chat box for everybody. That is where you're going to find the requirements for the entire process. So it's going to include everything that Norina has presented about with regard to the program requirements and the application requirements. but also about the technical aspects of submitting that particular grant. So, you know, if you are interested and you are eligible to apply for this particular grant, please visit and download that solicitation and read it very carefully, word for word. There will be the TICLA TTA resource page that we have hosted. And of course, we are, again, we're NIJA, the National American Indian Court Judges Association. Elton and Ansley, can you go ahead and post our website here in the chat box as well? And we have been TA providers for, I would want to say, about 9 years now. So we have a good amount of resources on our TICLA page that includes webinars, publications, and other videos there for your reference. Please go ahead and visit and poke around and look at those particular resources. And if you have any questions about those, or if you have any TA requests, regardless of whether or not you're a grantee, feel free to reach out to us, and we are available to talk to you. And then, of course, there's the Enhanced Sentencing Authority TTA project that the American Probation and Parole Association hosts. And I am looking, and it looks like we do have a question that has come up. So does the main applicant need to be a 501c3, or can a 501c3 apply as a user under the tribe? Narina or Gisela, do either of you want to take on that question?
Can you repeat the question again?
The question is, does the main applicant need to be a 501c3? Or can the 501c3 apply as a user under the tribe?
The applicant has to be a 501c3.
Okay. All right. So to whomever answered this, asked this question, whoever applies has to be the 501c3. So the way that we've kind of seen this over the years with some of the grantees is, you know, either the tribe can have its own nonprofit, or it would be a nonprofit, you know, a legal organization who provides services to the tribe, but they would be the prime applicant because they have to be 501c3s to be eligible.
Nikki, this is Gisela. Just to add a little bit to that, if the applicant applies and they apply just because they have the 501c3 and they pass all the funds to the tribe as a sole sub-grantee, the applicant is still responsible for the reporting and the money, and they're responsible to make sure whatever's in that application is actually what is done. So they're still here responsible, even if they, I want to say, a placeholder, because that's what that question sounds like.
Yes, and then as a follow-up, there was another question that says, can the Indian tribe apply directly? And it's, as Narina and Gisela stated earlier, it depends. You know, if that tribe has a 501c3, then yes. But the prime eligibility, as Narina mentioned, is that the applicant has to be a 501c3. So if the tribe has a 501c3, then yes. We have seen past grantees. For example, Tulalip Tribes has a 501c3, so they were able to apply and were a grantee several years ago through its tribal nonprofit, through its tribal 501c3. And I believe UROC also applied and has a tribal 501c3. And so they were also a grantee a few years ago.
Thank you, Nikki.
We do have another question that just came in, Narina. Just to clarify, we have a grants department and the nonprofits we want to partner with, but they do not have the capacity to apply any federal grants. So we want to assist them to provide services in our community. We were just wondering how this partnership might work on paper. Norina, can you
Okay,
explain to that?
Can you
said the
repeat the
tribe
question?
had the grant department, but the
Mhm.
nonprofit does not have the capability
To
to
write the
manage
grant.
the grant. They're not going to be able to get that award because they have to submit the financial capabilities questionnaire. And if they're not going to be able to pass the financial ability questionnaire, we're not going to be able to. They're not going to be able to get the funding because whoever the name is on the grant, that's who we will actually monitor, and they would have to have a financial system.
And that the tribe would be a subrecipient, like you had mentioned before.
Right,
I think
the tribe is a subrecipient. Yeah.
Yeah, Gisa, I think they were saying that that nonprofit doesn't have a grant writer, so they don't have capacity to apply for grants. So they were trying to work on a partnership. And so within the chat, Angelica, excuse me, Deborah Dahl did mention and reply and say an MOU or an MOA. Just in generally in the grants world, a lot of those types of relationships do happen between tribes and organizations. And so that might be the type of partnership that you might develop on paper. So, you know, if the tribe were to be the one who has the capacity and the time right now to write the grant and to work with the 501c3, that would be written out and delineated on the MOA or the MOU. And then that nonprofit would be the one to submit. But as Gisela mentioned, there are some financial requirements there that include the financial capabilities and competency paper and check that you have to include with your grant. So long as, you know, that nonprofit that you want to partner with can, you know, successfully fill that out and pass that form on, you know, you shouldn't, hopefully, you know, that type of relationship would work. And then, sorry, I'm just looking through the chat as well. And so there was just a little bit of discussion about the 501c3 tribal relationship in that particular example. Angelica, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can maybe chat about this and what that might look like on paper. Does anybody else have any additional questions about either the grant itself, about the TICLA program, about applying for this particular grant? Feel free to place that in the chat or to reach out to Elton or Ansley. Norina and Gisela, we have a question that's come in that says, do we have to match on this grant?
No.
No match.
Yeah,
no match is required.
Okay, no match requirements. Do we have any other questions? Somebody did ask for the solicitation number on grants.gov. So Eric, a little further up, there was a link to the actual solicitation. And normally within that solicitation, you should be able to find that particular number, the solicitation number. But Norina, Gisela, if anybody has that number available, let's just go ahead and place that in the chat as well. But like we mentioned, further up in the chat, we had put the link for the full solicitation. So if you go there, that's, there we go. Thank you. There, somebody put a solicitation number in the chat. So we can go ahead and keep an eye out for that. If we have the Elton and Ansley, if you could also maybe keep an eye out for that, that would be great. Do we have any other questions related to this particular grant, to the solicitation, to applying? If not, we are about at our time. Norina, do you have any particular additional closing comments that you would like to make. This particular webinar has been really informative, and it's actually just been jam-packed full of information that's really important. So again, I do encourage you all to find that solicitation right here, this FY 2021 TEQLA solicitation. Please download it and please really look at every single one of the requirements. Make that checklist of each of those documents that you need to upload. Go ahead and start working on, your the various elements of it and getting any of the supporting documentation that you might need, whether those are letters of support. You should probably try to do that now. Just speaking from experience and going through the process of uploading documents for federal grants and those proposals, it is a good amount of work, and you're going to want to just make sure that you're very organized, and that as you're going through the solicitation that you're taking those notes and that you're making those solicitations, and that you are really visualizing and mapping out how you want to, number one, design your project, but then number two, how you're going to implement that, and just make it really, really clear and keep cross-referencing with that solicitation to make sure that you are hitting all of those requirements that the BJA has asked for within, the document itself. Anything else, Narina and Gisela?
Yes.
Anything that you would love to pass along to our attendees?
Well, I want to share publicly with people, thank you for attending our webinar session. I also want to thank many of persons in our agency who have helped us with planning and implementing this webinar session. And I'm not going to list them all by name, but more by organization. And we have our BJA Tribal Court and Tribal Team members, the National American Indian Court Judges Association, our BJA Program Office, and thank you, Gisela, for helping us, and our telecom team out of our Office of Chief Information Officer, our BJA Communications team. They did a fantastic job getting all of that information out the door, and our OJP Informational Technology Service Desk, our BJA National Training and Technical Assistance Center. Again, thank you for all of your help and training and coaching provided toward planning and implementing this webinar session. And again, thank you for everyone for attending.
Absolutely.
The recording will be posted at the BJA TICLA page. I'm not exactly sure when, but I would recommend that if you need to refer to it, it will be up there. I just think it's going to take a couple of days or more to get this posted on the BJA website. And if you need my address, it is Narina. It is narina.henry@USDOJ, and that's N as in Nancy, O as in Oscar, E as in Edward, N as in Nancy, A as in Apple, .Henry, H as in Hank, E as in Edward, N as in Nancy, R as in Robert, Y as in Yellow, at O as in Oscar, J as in Julie, P as in Paul, .USDOJ.gov.
Thank you, Narina. And Elton did put your email and Gisela's email in the chat box. So Narina's contact and Gisela's contact are right there for you all to go ahead and copy and paste. Elton's going to quickly put up our emails as well. Gisela, if you don't have anything else to add, we'll go ahead and end our webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us. We absolutely, number one, value you and your work and your time, and specifically because of this grant, we value Narina and Gisela for taking the time to thank you so much for taking the time to walk through this particular solicitation. Sometimes these can be really intimidating, so we really, both of you, for walking walking through this particular solicitation with us all, and for taking the time to be able to take questions from everyone. And this solicitation, of course, is open. And so all of you guys who are interested and who are eligible to apply, like we mentioned, please visit that link, download the solicitation, and pass along any other questions. And also know that my staff and I are here as resources as well. Elton has put our emails in the chat box. Again, I'm Nikki Campbell, I'm Paiute and Ute, and I'm the Executive Director of NYJA. Ansley Sherman is our program attorney, and Elton Naswood is our program coordinator, who helps and assists with all of our justice capacity building activities at NYJA, and of course with the TQIP program. That being said, thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you are well. And please take care, and we hope that we can see you somewhere along the line down the road at an in-person event when we're all able to travel. So in the meantime, you know, stay safe and stay healthy, and let us know if you have any additional questions or need any additional help. Right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.